The Prime Minister has been giving his reaction to that announcement of the ceasefire by the Foreign Ministry.
Well, we will judge him by his actions, not his words. What is absolutely clear is the UN Security Council resolution says he must stop what he's doing, brutalising his people. If not, all necessary measures can follow to make him stop. That is what we agreed last night. That is what we're preparing for, and we'll judge him by what he does.
Well, David Cameron speaking a little earlier. He's also been speaking to our political editor at length, Nick Robinson. So let's hear what he had to say.
What it means is that if he doesn't stop attacking civilians, killing innocent people, going into Benghazi, if he doesn't stop these things, then the international community can use all necessary means, and that means some of the things that you spoke about, in order to save those people, to protect those lives. And this is the United Nations, the world's governing body, the clearest possible resolution, the clearest possible legal basis for action that no one wants to take. No one wants to see this happen. But if he doesn't stop those attacks, that action should be taken to protect those people, but also, I would argue, to protect our own national interest.
That's how it begins. How does it end? What is mission accomplished? Is it that Colonel Gaddafi has to be gone?
Well, the UN Security Council is clear that it's about protecting people, it's about saving lives, it's about protecting people in that country. And that is what we're engaged in. It's up to the Libyan people to choose their government. Like many other world leaders, like people around the world, I don't think Libya has any future with Colonel Gaddafi in charge. And seeing what we've seen in recent weeks only underlines that. But what we're embarked on is implementing that resolution, which is about saving lives and stopping slaughter.
But you are prepared for the long haul. If he sticks with it, Colonel Gaddafi, you stick with it.
Well, we will stick with this Security Council resolution, and that is ceasefire, saving lives, stopping slaughter. But I believe that that will actually help what is necessary, which is a transition for Libya to have a more open and democratic future, which is what everybody should want to see in our world.
Many people watching this, I think, will ask themselves this question. Why is our Prime Minister risking the lives of British servicemen and women to save Libyan lives while making cosy phone calls to the King of Bahrain, who's oppressing his own people, or not acting in Zimbabwe, for example?
Well, first of all, I would say this is not only in international interest to save lives, it's also in our national interest. We know what Colonel Gaddafi is capable of. We have suffered from him in the past. Do we want to leave a rogue state on Europe's border encouraging terrorism and all the problems that he could bring? No, we don't. This is in our national interest as well as the wider moral interest of actually stopping the slaughter of civilians. As for other countries, we should treat them as we find them. We should recognise different countries are different. The King of Bahrain is trying to reform his country, wants a referendum, wants to have a political dialogue. Bahrain and Libya are not the same. And in Libya, the case for action, as the United Nations Security Council has said, is right and legal, and if he doesn't pull back, it needs to happen.
You once told me, before you ran to be leader of your party, that you had asked yourself, could you send men and women potentially to die? Did you also ask yourself the question, what if I get it horribly wrong?
Well, of course, I've had to think extremely carefully before taking these steps. But it does seem to me, in this case, where you have the world coming together through the United Nations in a completely legal and open way, saying this slaughter must stop, the ceasefire must happen, and if it doesn't, the world has permission to act to make it stop. It does seem to me that it's right for Britain not to play some disproportionate part, not to grandstand, not to pretend we're something we're not, but to play a part with allies, with Americans, with the French, with Arab countries themselves, to try and make this slaughter stop. It seems to me that is the right thing for Britain to do.
This is not a repetition of Iraq and Tony Blair.
It is very clearly not a repetition of anything from the past, and the UN Security Council resolution makes clear there cannot be, there will not be, an occupying force. This is the Arab world that is asking us and others to act with them to stop slaughter.
Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed.
Prime Minister speaking to Nick Robinson. Well, let's cross to Downing Street, and Nick, who's there. The Prime Minister doesn't need us to tell him this is one of the most serious decisions a leader can take. In terms of what happens next and how much has changed with this ceasefire, what's your analysis?
Well, you get a sense of how quickly things can change. The Prime Minister heard the news of that ceasefire whilst in the midst of doing a round of media interviews. Shortly after I'd been speaking to him, I went back in the room as he was being told the news of the ceasefire, and obviously had to think instantly what he would do and what he would say. You heard his answer just a few minutes ago. What matters is Colonel Gaddafi's deeds and not his words. But it is already clear, if it was not palpably clear to many people before now, that Colonel Gaddafi, often condemned as mad, often condemned as out of control, either himself is cannier than people are suggesting, or at least has people around him, including his sons, who are clear strategic thinkers. They have prepared for this moment. It has been signalled for a long time that the world might act against them, and have now decided, in the way that Saddam Hussein did in the build-up to war in Iraq, to act. In other words, to remove what they call the casus belli, the cause of war, and to say you now don't have the excuse to act. The question will be, what follows next? The answer is, no one knows.
Indeed, Nick, thank you very much for that.